Hello, gorgeous starseeds and light workers. I'm Alexander Quinn, and today I've got the very beautiful inside and out Daniel Scranton. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good, thank you. I'm well rested.
Good. Now, here in the UK, it's about 9:15, but your time where you are, it's very early in the morning. I think it's like 6 in the morning or something.
I've had to become an early bird since I moved to Australia because my calendar's already set like months and months in advance. So everybody was already booked in for 6 a.m. sessions here, um, because it's 10 a.m. in Hawaii and that's where I moved from. So yeah, I'm always up at this hour.
Mm. I wish I could say the same thing. I'm a terrible morning person. I'm absolutely terrible in the morning. And for people that are not aware, Daniel has a cat, a beautiful female cat that is close by, is going to be wandering in and out. So
Purring.
if you see a cat, don't worry, it's all normal and it's part of the whole thing. Now we were having a little bit of a pre-chat before we came on, and I was saying to you that I've personally been watching you for about 7 years. I've been watching you for a very, very long time, even before I started my channel, because it was about 7 or 8 years ago that I became conscious of the Arcturians and awakening and the whole process and everything. So for me, this is a little bit like interviewing one of my idols, a little bit like one of my galactic idols. And I really honestly, I really mean that. Honestly, I look up to you because although I'm doing similar work, but a little bit different. You started a long time before I did, so
Mm.
I came on the scene a little bit later, and I feel like you are one of the main kind of Arcturian people out there on the internet, and you have been for a very, very long time. And
Mm.
that's really, especially when people like Cryon, Lee Carroll interviewed you on his channel, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
That was
so
big.
there's some major people who recognize you, including myself. And for ever since I started my channel, I always thought I would love to have Daniel on because he's lovely inside and out. And there's very, very few people who A, channel the Arcturians, and B, do it for a full-time living.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that is a stretch. Most people, most people think, what am I going to do for a living? Well, I'm going to channel the Arcturians and I'm going to do it full time. It's a pretty crazy thing by most people's standards, even within the New Age community, right?
Yeah.
And and yet here we are both doing it. So on some level, I feel this tremendous, if I can say this, if you will allow me to say this tremendous level of brotherhood that I feel towards you. And really what I wanted to explore in the time that we're going to have today is a little bit more about you and how it
Mhm.
all started, because a lot of people, you channel the Arcturians almost every day or every other day on your channel. And
I was doing it every day for years. Yeah. And now I take a couple days a week off.
I know how that feels.
Yeah.
And I really want more people to know about you. I really want to get more people knowing about how special you are. And the way I'm going to open that gambit is to ask you, how did it all start for you? Where did the whole thing start? And where did the Arcturians come in? And how did they come in? Is that okay?
Perfect. It'll be a long monologue.
I'm
Um,
ready. I'm ready.
yeah.
I want to know. Give us the long version.
First of all, it's good for people to know I woke up around the year 2000. I don't know the exact date, but I do know that it was through an interview that I listened to between Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra. And I really liked Deepak Chopra. And I started following him and reading his books and listening to his lectures. And he was basically proving to me through quantum physics that there's more to life than I had been thinking for a long time, which is that I was pretty much just a Darwinian atheist, and so once I woke up, it wasn't long before I discovered channeling. It was maybe 2-3 years, and I discovered channeling, and I was reading all these channeled books. I was reading Conversations with God books, the Seth books, Emmanuel's books. I eventually was convinced by somebody in a Seth group to check out Abraham. And once I did, I went about as furiously down that rabbit hole as one can go, because I was traveling all around the world, following Esther and Jerry around, going on their cruises, going to as many workshops as I could, not realizing that the whole time I was getting these attunements, that I was becoming a channeler myself, not even thinking of that as a possibility, not even really wanting it. But in the beginning of 2010, everything changed. It actually started on an Abraham cruise, because that's where the first time I was doing Reiki on someone, and my hand moved by itself. And I also received a jolt of energy through my crown that made me gasp. And then, because I had such a cool experience doing Reiki there, I kept doing it. And I just did it on as many people as I could. And what happened is, eventually I noticed my hands would not only pick up off the person, but also move in a windshield wiper motion over their body. And then my head would do this infinity symbol. And then I started to make whispering sounds. Something like that. And when I made the sounds, I thought, oh, channeling. Am I going to channel someday? And then that's still in January of 2010. In March, I had the big download experience that is the most profound experience of my life. I mean, my daughter being born was huge, but this was something else, because I'm lying in bed. I have a dream with one of my Abraham friends in it, and I just look at him, and we're standing in like a desert, and I said to him, I understand now about the other beings. And by other beings, I knew that I meant extraterrestrials, because he was a big ET guy and I wasn't. And so every time he would talk about ETs, I would kind of like tune him out, roll my eyes or something. And I wake up from that particular dream. This is March 2010. And all of a sudden, energy is coming in through my crown and going through my body in waves. And it's complete ecstasy. I'm skipping over a very important part. So a day and a half before this happened, I was in complete despair in my life. I was in terrible pain. I didn't want to be in my marriage anymore, and I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how. I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want to be, responsible for her pain and her sadness. So I was carrying that around, and I was carrying this pain in my body. And even though on the surface, someone looking at my life would think he's got a good life, I was not happy, and I wanted to leave. And I thought about how to leave, suicide, all that stuff. But obviously I didn't take any action on that. And and it wasn't that night, but it was the night after that this all happened. So while this is happening, the first thought I had was, oh, this is a healing I'm getting. And then my next thought was, I wonder what this has to do with that dream, as wave after wave of pure ecstasy is flowing through my body. And then I thought, I wonder what this has to do with aliens, because I knew the other beings meant aliens. And as soon as I thought the word aliens, I got a huge surge of energy, as if I was onto something. And so I went from begging for more. That was the first part of it. I'm just begging them to give me more of this beautiful ecstasy. And then I went from that to asking questions, and I'm asking questions, and I'm getting yeses in the form of surges of energy in my body from head to toe. And then eventually got to the point where I thought, maybe I can see you in the room. if I open my eyes. And so I open my eyes and I'm looking around and there's no one there, but all the surges are coming like with the same intensity as though it was the very first one. So that goes on for I don't even know how long before it eventually stops, and I have to get up, and it's 2:30 or something in the morning. And I basically just dedicated myself from that moment to furthering what I was already doing, which was meditating like an hour a day and going deeper in that and going for the feeling again. Because the thing that people don't understand about channeling, and I'm sure you do, is that the channeling part is the energy. The speaking part is sort of the energy runoff. It's sort of like this is what the energy sounds like in words, but most people don't understand that what the channeler is experiencing is an energy surge in their body, like a download that feels, Esther Hicks calls it like having your toe in a light socket. And that's a really accurate description because it's not so overwhelming that you can't handle it, but it's so obvious there's something more present and it's inside of you. And a channeler just sort of like remembers, figures out, allows it to come through them in words. A lot of people have it come through in pictures in their mind. Some people write songs. Some people write movies. I used to write movies. I used to write screenplays in Hollywood. And yeah, that so I've led a lot of lives. And and so I was trying to get the feeling back, really, and connect to these ETs too. And what happened was I started to have dry heaves in the middle of like deep explorations into this energy. Like I was retching, as you say in the UK. I was not throwing anything up, but it was a convulsion of sorts in my body. And this actually happens at an Abraham workshop in October that year, where I'm sitting there. I'm trying to like tune into Esther's energy and what she's bringing through, and I'm convulsing. And I go, okay, I better stop this now because it's a small room. It was a small Abraham workshop, and I didn't want to be a distraction. But my friends convinced me, you gotta ask tomorrow about this. So I'm sitting at the workshop the next day, and my friend is in the hot seat, and my arm just goes up by itself like this. Because usually you don't raise your hand while someone else is sitting there talking to Abraham. My hand was going gradually up. And then when she got out, it went all the way up. And I got a full, full goosebump sensation in my body. And of course, they chose me to get in the hot seat and talk to them. And it was the first time I had raised my hand that day. And so I asked, what's going on? Like, what is this? And they said, you're going to be a channeler, basically. And you just have to work through this resistance of yours. And I thought, I didn't know I had resistance, but I actually had a girlfriend at the time in London. Well, she was living in London. I was in LA, she was in London. So we were Skyping 4 times a week anyway. So then what we did was we included at the end of the Skype a channeling attempt. So in the course of that, from March, between March and this time, which is October, I did leave that marriage that I was like so wanting to be out of. So that's why I had a girlfriend in London. And I met her on Abraham Cruise. Like so many things like that happened related to Abraham. It's crazy. So we're practicing, but this is what it looks like when I'm channeling. It's just a whole lot of head and neck movements with looking like I'm in pain. It's not pain. It's like the body's trying to get used to all this extra energy that's present. And so it's moving me around, and I still move around when I channel. I still have that my arm shoots up and my fingers are flapping and my other hand's doing a mudra and going over my heart, like kind of pounding against my heart too. And so eventually I spoke at first I spoke little phonetic sounds like p p p ch 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 ch, but then I spoke for a group called that I eventually called the Creators, because a lot of people also don't realize that some of the beings that we're channeling, they don't go around with name tags. Like they don't have names where they are because they don't need it. They're all known by their vibrational signature. So they're coming through, but I don't know what to call them. And they really wanted me to pick a name for them. And I just felt like that was too big of a responsibility. So for a long time, I called them. I didn't want to get it wrong is the right way of saying that. So I just called them what my ex was calling them. She was calling them Grandpa. So for a while it was Grandpa, which is a terrible name for them. But eventually in an automatic writing exercise, I got the name The Creators, and it really stuck, and I really got confirmation of it from a strange place in the universe almost immediately after. And then from there, that's 2010 still. So I eventually was alerted to the fact that there are people out there who channel more than one being. So I don't just have to channel the Creators. So I started channeling a fairy called Ophelia in 2013. Then it was the Hathors and Archangel Michael, Archangel Gabriel, Pleiadians, and then the Founders. And I eventually, Kuan Yin. What's funny with the Arcturians is that I will sometimes have the thought like, oh, it would be cool to channel such and such. I don't do it right away, but I have the thought, like I had that with the Pleiadians, for example, that it would be cool to channel some Pleiadians. And for a while, I didn't even get the Pleiadians. I got the Zetas instead, that came through. So I've channeled just about everything you can imagine. And at some point, for some reason, I just was like, okay, now it's time. And it was around the time I met my current wife. Around that same time that she came into my life, and she's channeled them too. I started to, first of all, she's Asian, and I had just been channeling Kuan Yin, so that was funny to me. And then it was the Arcturians, and for some reason, once I started channeling them for the daily message, I said, you know what, I really like how this is going, because I had switched it up so frequently. The daily message had come from all those beings I mentioned previously, to including the unicorns, like all kinds of beings I had used for the daily message. And the Arcturian just stuck. I just liked the progression of their messages and how much more time sensitive the messages were becoming and detailed and things like that I hadn't gotten previously. So that's why I've stuck with them. And it's only been really recently that I've started to include another group in the daily messages that I channel, and that's a group of ascended masters. The ascended masters and the archangels, both, I think, really operate as collectives, even though we like to section them off into individuated. But that all happened during a channeling class I was teaching. And I've just stuck with channeling them because it felt so right to do it at the time.
And how do you feel? I tell you what it feels like for me. It's been a very what's interesting. I wanted to interrupt you a trillion times when you were talking, because so much of what you were saying, I'm like, oh my god, I know what that feels like. Oh my god, like yes, like oh my god, yeah, as well. Because on some level, I know what you understand. I understand what you're saying. Like, I never chose this work, and I never chose the Arcturians either. So I really do understand that. It's almost like, well, from an earthly point of view, it chose us, but of course, there's more to that picture that goes on. But when I am channeling them, or I channel them, or I put a video out, what I always find fascinating is sometimes I will. Recently, I put a video about where I did it live. Usually, I will do it behind the scenes and type it up. But usually, I did a video where I did it live recently, and then I watched it back, and I was like, where did that come from? It's almost like I'm here, but I'm not here. It almost feels like I'm in a dream state when it's happening. And then I watch it back and I'm like, where did that come from? How does it feel like when you're doing it?
It feels like I'm very much there. I don't feel like I go anywhere, but it's a collaboration. It's a coming together of their consciousness with mine so that there's more. Like when I'm channeling, I don't speak the same way as when I'm speaking to you right now. There's more, it's bombastic, it's confident, there's no hesitation, there's no stuttering, but it actually took years for me to get to that point where my channeling was where it is today in terms of there's no pauses. It's really the clarity of it is not. When I'm channeling, I could just go and go and go and go. And when I first started, I couldn't do that really. I needed a person to be sitting there and asking a question in order for me to even channel. I never channeled like I do with this freestyle general message to society thing that I'm doing now. It was only ever in a group setting or a one-on-one setting where there's a person who had questions. Now I have sessions with people where they're like, I just want you to channel for me for 40 minutes, for an hour, and I'm not going to say anything. And that would have been a completely daunting thing for me early on. But now it's like, it's so much more smooth and rapid fire kind of consciousness that I do feel like when you start out, your channels open only so wide, and as you continue, it just goes wider and wider and wider. But I kind of wish I was more of a trance channeler, because then there would be less doubt. There would have been less doubt from the very beginning about it. For me, I would have just been like, oh, well, I wasn't saying any of that. I was off in la la land and doing whatever I was doing, but I definitely wasn't able to stop it or edit it or do anything like that. Whereas my experience was just the opposite. I was very present. There were times when I'd be channeling when I'd feel like, oh, I don't want to go out too far out on a limb here, and I'd kind of stop it from being more specific. So I've learned over the years to trust it to the point where I can get out of the way, but I'm totally, in my life and in my channeling, a complete work in progress. And I don't feel at all like just because I do this, I've reached some sort of pinnacle of my spirituality. It's an ongoing process with the channeling in being the best channeler I can be. And I'm still, way I think I still have a long ways to go to be sort of in that level of like a Jane Roberts, where she's like, I mean, she's my Michael Jordan, really. Like, you don't even really want to compare yourself to someone like Jane and Seth, because it's like, then you just won't even do it. You'd be like, what's the point? But there is a point. And the point is that we all have to give a different perspective. Some people can't handle Seth. Some people would pick up a Seth book and go, well, that was too confusing for me, but they would love and appreciate my channeling or Abraham or your channeling or something.
When I am working with the Arcturians, I sometimes I also have the Mantis come in a lot, but they are the Mantis are almost so far removed from my reality. The Arcturians almost sometimes feel easier to bring in. But the question that I have for you is, I put out a video like once a week on YouTube, and I'm doing it. I'm doing some stuff for clients 3 times a day during the week. The question I have for you is, on some level, you have to, in order to do what you do, and in order to do what I do, you have to completely remove yourself out of the picture. So your consciousness or our consciousness or my consciousness is here. And then you have to, it's almost like when I'm doing the work or you're doing the work, you have to completely unplug yourself and get out of the way, as you said.
Yeah, I get out of the way. Yeah.
And I'm very conscious of how that feels, because you have to remove ego, emotional attachment, expectation, all these things. And what I find fascinating but very honorable about what you do and how you do it and the extent that you do it too, almost every day, is that you have to proceed through that getting out the way thing every day or every other day, every time you channel and put a video out. And I guess the question that I have is, do you find that exhausting?
Invigorating. Yeah. It's like I'm plugging in, I'm getting more when I'm doing it than I would when I go through a normal day doing all the things that we do in a normal day. Like you're house hunting now, we're house hunting. We're always going out and getting food and doing things like that. Like the things with a 4-year-old. So there's a lot of convincing to get in the car seat, get out of the car seat. Like there's a lot that we have to do that isn't invigorating really by its nature. But this is by its nature invigorating, I think, because first of all, I get to close my eyes. I get to tune in. Now it's not as invigorating for me as meditation is, because meditation, I don't have to do anything. Whereas this, I still have to speak and pay attention. Like I feel like I have to pay attention. Like they need me to understand it in order for them to be able to. And I think that the opposite is really true. I have to understand what I'm being asked or what they're being asked in order for me to be able to translate what I'm getting accurately back to them. That's why having people ask questions is so much better than having people not ask questions, because it tunes the channeler is a part of it. Even if they're in a trance, even if the channeler is in a trance state, they're not going to suddenly be speaking in German or French. They're going to use their language, their vocabulary for the most part. I don't find myself using a lot of words I don't know the meaning of. In fact, I don't know if that it's ever happened. So it's really, for me, it's been a lifesaver to be a channeler, in terms of like giving me so much more of that alignment and that energy that I want to move through the day.
When you are preparing to channel, preparing for a message to be conveyed for the collective, for Earth, for anybody, quite frankly, do you sit down and go, okay, I'm ready, and then it happens? Or do you feel it coming on prior, or is it, or how does it sort of accumulate?
I don't know that it does. I think that it's it's in the moment thing. Like in the moment, I have to. So what it used to be is I used to go on these hikes, and this was before I started channeling on camera. I'd be on a hike, and I'd carry my cell phone with me, and I'd stop at a certain point on the hike, and I'd put the voice memo on and I'd start channeling, and then I would upload that audio onto YouTube with just a picture, and then I would transcribe it. But that's a beautiful way to channel, because I'm doing the thing I love the most, which is hiking, and I'm in nature, which is so high vibrational and supportive of us reaching these altered states of consciousness. And so it was ideal then. And then when I started doing them at night, I was taking a nap before doing it, cuddling with my wife before, like all these wonderful experiences led up to. But now I do them in the afternoon because I'm in Australia, and it just works better for me to have my client sessions during the day. And then after my last client session, so I've been channeling now for hours, and then I do a daily message. So that's also a nice lead into it, is to have been working all day and have the pump primed for me to channel that message.
Mm. Do you ever find stress or anxiety gets in the way?
Yes, the state of being of the channeler matters. I remember a story Esther told about when she and her husband, her late husband Jerry, used to live on a farm of sorts, and they had chickens, and one of the chickens got taken by a fox or coyote or something, and she was so upset because she loved that chicken. And so she went to channel Abraham about it, and she said she couldn't. It was the one time in her life she couldn't get to Abraham because she was distraught over emotionally. You don't want to channel when you're in that space anyway. People will sometimes say, I'm afraid to do it. I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know if some entity is going to come and try to take over. Well, then definitely don't do it, because you don't want to create your reality through fear. And so what you really want to do is say, channeling is something I'm interested in, but what I love to do is paint, or what I love to do is sing or dance. So do those things. And what will happen is you'll get into a higher vibrational state, and then the channeling will just start to happen. And you may still get freaked out by it at first and go, oh my God, I've let go. I've opened up and I've let something in and I don't know what it is. So I'm scared and I'm going to shut it down. But a lot of people do have to deal with those fears first before they can do it. Because if you think about kids playing with a Ouija board, that is the absolute worst way, because they're doing it out of curiosity, but they like the idea of doing this sort of seance where it's a little bit scary and it's a sleepover or something. And they're all a little bit scared, but also curious. And so then they're likely to get some sort of lower vibrational fragment or entity or whatever it is, thought form. But someone who's meditated for a long time and is doing something that leads into the channeling that's very, very high vibrational, like take a bath or go for a walk in nature or take a nap or whatever, meditate, whatever it is, then you're really in the right frame of mind and vibration to be able to let this energy move through you.
Speaking of Ouija boards and stuff, as a kid, as a 17-year-old, I know I was doing all that stuff in the early days when I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember I was living in Guildford, which is a town. Do you know The Omen, the film, the movie, The Omen?
I do. I remember seeing that when I was young, and it freaked me out.
Yeah, with Gregory Peck. So
Yeah.
so when early on in the film, when they're going up to that cathedral and the kid is in the back of the Jag and he's freaking out, that is Guildford Cathedral. I used to live there. And I was into esoterics very early on, because my uncle is a full-time tarot card reader. My mom was a psychic. Her Mom was a psychic. Her mom was a famous astrologer. It runs in the family. Like, I get a lot of people that say, I want to heal the world and I want to do this and help the collective. Like, I was never interested in this work. Like, I never wanted to heal the world. I never wanted to help anyone. Like, this just came on me. And I remember, you're talking about Ouija boards, but in the early days, I remember being 17 and living in Guildford when I was at a music college. And me and a friend were playing with a Ouija board. And I was sharing a one bed flat with someone else. And we got a Ouija board out, and this name came through. It was something like Nick Robinson or something. And we was like, no, it's like it doesn't mean anything anyway. And then my friend was in the bedroom next door, and he said, "What have you been up to?" I said, "We've been doing a Ouija board next door." And he was like, "Oh my god!" He was like really upset. And I said, "Yeah,
Yeah.
we had this name, Nick Robinson, come through, and he went white as a ghost." I said, "Are you okay?" He was like, "The guy that used to live in the room before you was called Nick Robinson before he committed suicide." Can you imagine?
Yeah. Yeah.
Serious stuff. But one thing I'm intrigued to ask you, because it's a little bit different. I'm channeling, you're channeling, we're channeling similar beings in a different way. And what I'm always conscious of, lovely Daniel, is that it's always a little bit different for everyone. How it comes through, how it starts, how it happens. There's no one person I've ever met where it's always the same. It's always a little bit different. And what I'm conscious of is that on a Friday, after a week full of clients, on a Friday, what I will do is I will consciously close conduit and actually shut down, so that not only the Arcturians, but the Mantis and every other Tom, Dick, and Harry who's trying to come in, I can sort of mentally rest, because I'm very conscious of my thoughts, but I'm also very conscious of their thoughts becoming my thoughts as well. What I want to ask you as a sort of fellow brother is, do you at some level, and this is a two-pronged question, yeah? Do you at some level close down so that you can have your own thoughts to yourself, or are you conscious on some level that you are conscious, well, these are my thoughts and this is what's going on, and then that's them, and there's some like a dual plane of existence, consciously connected all the time, or do you shut it off, or none of the above?
Really, none of the above. I feel like while channeling has changed me, because it's been about 13 years now, it's October now. So it's been about 13 years since it started. And it's all changed me for the better as a person. But like I said, I'm still a work in progress, like we all are. And I do feel like that has happened, like all that energy running through me all these years has made a difference. But I don't, as far as thoughts go, I don't really think I don't really think we can claim ownership of any thought, because our brains are these receivers. They're like radios, and thoughts exist in, this is something I remember asking Abraham about at least once, if not twice, because I was so amazed to learn through Abraham that there's no such thing as a new thought. That there is, and I just couldn't wrap my head around, like, how could there not be a new thought? And now I realize, thoughts exist just all around us. They have a life of their own. Abraham has also said, once you think a thought, then the thought starts thinking, which is interesting. And of course, Seth goes into all kinds of really scientific like detail as to how this all works. And I've heard near-death experiencers too, in their reports, say that when they were dead, they could see thoughts and they could feel thoughts like whooshing past them and things like that. And they could see the prayers that were being prayed for them. And so these things exist. And so what we want to do in our normal waking consciousness, the state that we walk around in, is make sure we've got our radio tuned at the highest frequency possible so that we're accessing those thoughts. And um, as a songwriter, those ideas, those tunes, and the Beatles obviously knew this, and I know I've heard somebody talk about how Prince knew this. They're in the ethers, and you're just receiving those songs. Or for me, it was these ideas for movies, that would just come in, and they came when a lot of times when you're not trying to think of them, which is like trying to find your car keys thing. I always think like that finding your keys is the perfect analogy for how a person goes from trying to channel to actually channeling. Because when you're looking for your keys or the remote or now your cell phone, and you can't find it, it's usually when you give up that you find it, that you find what you're looking for. And the same is true with channeling. When you give up and you let it happen, then it happens, because you're not trying anymore. But getting back to the thought thing, I think like we really want to pay so much more attention to our vibration so that the thoughts that come to us are those higher frequency thoughts and those ideas, those inspired ideas that are going to help us solve problems in our lives or help us approach something in a different way, or do something differently with our work, than we had previously thought of.
Regards your channeling, how do you, from a lifestyle perspective, or protocols, or in the ways that you operate, is there anything that you do, or a way that you live, or certain routines that you have that allow you to do what you do or maintain your energy? Do you have things that you do first thing in the morning, or things that you practice, or is there like a sort of level of energy maintenance that you protocols that you have, or is it a little bit more general?
I'd say there used to be, I'd do those things like hiking every day. Like hiking was, I never missed a day. Now my life has changed so much since having a child that I rarely get to do that. And I wake up, like I said, so early now that there's not really time to meditate. I did meditate this morning because I woke up a little bit before my alarm. So whenever that happens, whenever I'm not sleeping, but I'm in bed, I'm meditating. And but that used to be my routine, is like meditate in the first thing in the morning, channel first thing in the morning, go outside and set my bare feet. I lived in Hawaii, so I could do it year round. My bare feet, and in Australia you can do it too, on the ground, and sort of welcome the day and the energies, and let them in, like make myself into a giant Y shape and those sorts of things. But I mean, I do hydrate very well, as I've probably taken several sips. Um, I have to remain hydrated. I eat only vegan raw food that's organic. I I do my best to take care of myself in that regard, but self-care is really important. And I think that while you can get away with, like Jane Roberts, for example, she smoked, she drank, and she still brought through this amazing work. So you can get away with it, but it makes it easier, in my opinion, to be a clean vessel, to take care of yourself in and your relationships with others. And of course, I've got, this cat here that is like, oh, you need some unconditional love here, you need to focus on something that is adorable and soft and wants your attention all the time. Here I am. Like, there's, because we were talking about cats before. It's like that kind of relationship, the kind of relationship where I have with my daughter, where we're playing, like we play constantly. I'm constantly channeling the characters from Frozen. for her, you know, and that's the game we play now. Like it's you be Christoph, I'll be Anna, you know, and so there's when you're going through your day, like before I had my wife and daughter in my life, I would channel song lyrics for the cats. Like I'd be singing to the cats around the house, you know, and now it's to them, you know, and dancing and all these things that are truly channeled moments where you just let go and you let energy move through you and you let something come out of you. I mean, it all. I am lucky. I'm very. I shouldn't say luck has anything to do with it. I would say I chose well for myself in this life. You know, I did a good job in that pre-life planning of choosing this all because I did. I have made it kind of easy for myself to be in a higher vibrational state. You know, most of the time.
Predominantly you channel the Arcturians. Do you think in the future you may channel other beings on your channel, or will you stick with the Arcturians?
Well, you know, recently Thymus, the collective of Ascended Masters, have started coming through me, and I want to channel more of the old groups too on the YouTube channel. I'm trying to find the right balance of bringing the creators in for a message every once in a while. I've never on my YouTube channel. Well, I shouldn't say that because I used to channel the female ones in the daily message and I put the post audio, but a lot of people have never seen me channel a Kuan Yin where I become her. You know, it's like I become much more feminine as I channel. My voice goes way up several octaves. And not that I've got the deepest voice as it is, but you know, I want to do that. And also in these channeling courses I teach, I'll channel along with the students. So everybody's muted, including me, and we're all channeling. And I've channeled recently the consciousness of the quarks, the subatomic particles. I've channeled the group called the Ancient Ones, who are the ones responsible for seeding all of life on Earth, you know, including us. Then they're just my regular, like, which, believe it or not, I haven't channeled my own guides much, my own spirit guides, but I channeled them recently, and my galactic team, and I'm sure there's others I can't think of now, but I am starting to branch out even more with what I'm channeling, because in those moments where everybody's going to the channeling state, I have this opportunity to say, I don't know who's coming through right now. I know that I'm going to like it. I know it's going to be good. And I get to play again with channeling. Like now it's work, right?
Yeah.
Once it becomes work, there aren't as many of those opportunities to just be like, oh, I want to see who I can channel today just for fun. But now I'm doing that and it is fun. And that's how Thymus, the collective of Ascended Masters, started coming through me, because prior to that I had channeled Kuan Yin, Saint Germain, Yeshua, Buddha, Mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene. So I had channeled 6. And it depends on also who else you might consider to be an Ascended Master, because I have channeled Krishna. But that, you know, that's a new development, which I'm really enjoying. I'm really enjoying playing with that.
And during client sessions, do you when and if you bring in the Arcturians, or they're working through you, or however you want to quantify it, is it mostly them coming in, or is it sometimes other beings as well, or a mix?
Most clients will ask for the Arcturians because I literally have probably well, I was going to say thousands. It's not thousands of videos on YouTube, but it's close to
Well,
maybe 2,000.
you have 3,500 something. I checked today.
But then the Arcturian ones, 7 years now, but not every day. That would be 7 times 365. But I don't like I haven't done it every day. Seven times 365 is 2,500. So almost 2,000 probably videos of me channeling them. So I'm known for that, and then other people are excited to talk to Thymus, and then other people are like, no, I only want you to channel Kuan Yin for me every session. So it's different from person to person. And when people leave it open and say, I just want to speak to whoever is the best person, being for me, then sometimes it's Saint Germain or somebody like or the Hathors I don't normally channel in sessions. But I like that openness too, of like, well, I don't know who's coming through right now until they start speaking.
I know the feeling. That's why I'm laughing. I really know the feeling. Do you know?
I channeled the mantis beings once, by the way, and only once. But I that would be interesting one too to get back into for me.
Do you know? They are fascinating. They're really fascinating. But I want to ask you a question based upon something I'm experiencing. I find personally that the more I integrate, work with, channel, whatever words you want to put on it, all of it's irrelevant really at the end of the day. But I find the more, and I don't want to say that I'm becoming schizophrenic or I'm losing the plot, but what I do want to say is that the more I experience these beings, and the more I experience working with them, and the more I experience how to work with them, and the more I experience becoming less of myself when I'm working with them, because I'm working with them more often than not, I am inherently experiencing a completely different reality. Well, certainly 3 times a day because of my clients, but also when I'm making YouTube videos. And therefore, increasingly, because I'm doing this for a full-time living, I'm on some level inherently experiencing more of a reality that is so devoid, so sometimes some ways attached, but also so different from my own, increasingly all the time, that I am finding myself on some level increasingly becoming more detached from the person that I used to be. But it's like this. It's constantly going up. And I find myself going to higher heights all the time. And at some level, I find that it's very exciting, but I find it's an incredibly lonely experience. And I'll tell you why, because as I start to negate the ego, suppress the ego, remove the ego, and get used to doing it when I'm working with these beings hours a day, every single day, apart from the weekend, when I do like normal stuff, go out to the movies and, socialize and do stuff like human stuff, I find that my reality is becoming more and more detached from the person that I used to be. And I find there are fewer and fewer and fewer people increasingly as time goes on that I can then relate and share those experiences with. And it becomes a lonelier and lonelier experience for me personally. Do you, 2 questions. Do you understand that? And secondly, do you find that yourself?
Well, certainly I'm a person who was born into this life and really went down the path of ego as far as you could go. I mean, oh man, did I love being the center of attention. I early on in life, I would get up in front of audiences and sing. And I'm talking about in places where it's not expected for that to happen. Like we in elementary school here, I don't know what you guys call it in the UK, primary school or something. Yeah. It's we have music class, and I would get up and I'd ask the teacher, "Hey, can I sing Hurt So Good by John Cougar Mellencamp in front of the class?" And she'd be like, "Yeah." nobody like she'd be like, what? Sure. And I do stuff like that. And so I've gone so far down that path now. And then you get to have a certain level of, recognition in the world like you and I have now, where it's like then you can get caught up in like a spiritual ego, where it's like you want to be seen and recognized for what you do. And it's a trap, of course. I think we live by the ego, we die by the ego. It's sort of like, you get a nice compliment, you're up here, you get a huge criticism, you're down here. So you have to, if you ever want to be that master who's just like, you know in that story that maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't, where it's like the son breaks his leg and then somebody's like, oh, isn't that awful? And then the guy's like, well, we'll see. And then somebody comes to recruit for the army and the son's passed over because oh no, the first part was they got a horse was given to the family, and the guy's like, aren't you really happy this happened? Well, and the guy's like, well, we'll see. And then his son falls off the horse and breaks his leg, and then that could be seen as a bad thing. But then the army recruiter comes, so it's thing after thing where the main character in the story keeps the even keel with all these things happening. And that's kind of like where we all have to see this also. I think the healthiest way is to not get caught up in the drama of all of these experiences, but realize, no, this isn't who we really are. This character that we're playing in this play or this game that we're in, that's not really who we are. So why would you ever want to get caught up in the idea of this temporary suit that you're wearing and all of it? But we still, of course, do. It's just it's funny. I did work right out of university. I worked in mental health for 3 years. I was working with people with schizophrenia. um, I never met anyone who has multiple personality disorder, and that's rare. That's a very rare diagnosis. But I think what you're describing is more of a multiple personality disorder type of experience, which that is almost like a just an exaggerated expression of what we all experience. Like, you're different when you're around your mom than when you're around your mates, than when you're around your lover, than when you're around kids. Like you become different aspects of yourself in these different roles that you're playing with different people. And when you realize that, you realize like, oh, I'm not really any of these. I'm the experiencer of all this. And really, to truly awaken is to know that you're wanting to be the true you, which is the source energy you, which is the unconditionally loving, compassionate you in all of these circumstances, and not get caught up in the circumstances themselves or with the drama, whatever it is that's playing out between you and another person or another life circumstance. But to see yourself as being able to detach is very important. And it's something that has really been driven home for me by listening to a lot of near-death experiencers talk about the way that they are able to see things when they're on the other side and when they come back. And really, yeah, getting less into, well, how will I be remembered? It's the like the most egoic thing you could ever think of is like, are they going to erect statues or not? How is my work going to be received 100 years from now? Is not really the point of any of this, even though we're told that it is from a very young age. Those are the things that really matter. and not how you experience all of it, which is the truth of how it really does matter, is that, it's the choice you make in that moment to go for either love or fear.
Do you this would probably be the most profound thing that I've asked you so far, but do you ever sense or feel on some level, now that there is this Arcturian connection amongst others, outside of your work, outside of your dream time, but within your waking hours, that there is some multi-dimensional synchronicity, string pulling going on now that you have some new friends? Do you ever sense that in your daily?
The synchronicities are astounding. The synchronicities, that pile up. The coolest synchronicities are the ones where it's three things happening at the same time. And I would have that happen where, let's say the word is power. So back in the day, I'd be listening to an Abraham CD and of a workshop that Esther and Abraham did. And I'd be driving in my car, and three things would happen all at once. Abraham would be saying the word power. I'd be having a thought with the word power in that exact same moment. And I'm looking outside of the window of my car and seeing the word power on a billboard or a sign of some kind. So there's so many examples like that of synchronicity now that, it's several usually in a day of synchronicity like that come up. And of course, because I've got a wife that's completely tuned in as well to all this stuff, she's the first woman I've ever been with who also channels, who also has she's a medium, she's a healer, she's got all these gifts. And so she and I will talk about this sort of thing all the time. I'm still working on. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Yeah, of course. The reason why I asked you that is because I find, lovely Daniel, that as I'm working more and more with these beings, I can feel them somewhere in the back, pulling little synchronistic strings. And the more I work with them, these crazy synchronicities keep ramping up all the time. And I'm always saying to my partner, "Oh my God, you're never going to guess what I'm doing." She's like, "Oh my God, I'm so bored of hearing about it. Like what happened now?" And the more I work with them, the more it ramps up all the time. And do you know what? There's a really fun Andromedan one that I can give you if you'd like. I'm actually, this is what people really struggle to get their heads around. Okay. And I don't mean that in a bad way or in a condescending way, but on an Akashic level, I'm actually a lot more Andromedan. I've had many more Andromedan lifetimes than I have had Arcturian. And people say, yeah, but you work with it, but you're Arcturian, right? Well, actually, yes, they're coming through. And right. This people always get confused. I actually, when I get very stressed, I have a reptilian being that turns a reptilian warrior that turns on my left-hand side to help me through stress and anxiety. And people always go, "But you're the Arcturian guy, right?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, I've got a lot of other things that are going on in my cache, and I've got other beings I'm working with. But for some reason, the Arcturians are using is a strong word, but there's a purpose I have between us at this moment in time. and people struggle with that a little bit because but you're mostly channeling the Arcturians and all the rest of it. So you must be mostly. But no, I'm not. I'm actually not. And in the early days, it was the Arcturians to some level, or you could say that it was myself that chose it, with them when they were coming through. But I'm going to tell you about a beautiful synchronicity that was not Arcturian, that was Andromedan. And my part of my galactic feminine self is Andromedan. My masculine side is a little bit more Arcturian. And when I was trying to contact the Andromedans early on, I was watching an Andromedan channel, and the Andromedans were coming through that channel on a tiny little YouTube channel that only has 900 subscribers that YouTube took down for reasons I don't understand. Anyway, probably talking too much truth. And they were saying, and the Andromedans were saying, there's a TV show called I Love Lucy with Lucille Ball, as you know, that actress.
I've seen it.
And the Andromedans are saying, you Earth guys are like kicking out all these radio waves, you're pumping out stuff on satellite antennas and radio, and we're picking it up. We're listening to the Spice Girls and we're listening to these TV shows, from the 50s and all that, and we're watching it because it's coming off your planet. Now, all of this stuff is, and for us, this is like just, it's like hearing, whispers. Yeah, but we're picking it up. We've got very advanced technology. So while your TV is picking it up, like we're picking it up in our own way and watching your broadcasts. And this guy was saying that the Andromeda was talking about I Love Lucy, this TV show from the 50s with Lucille Ball. So that night I went to bed and I've never had contact with the Andromedans before. But I've been having a lot of contact with the Arcturians. And I went into a meditation. I tried to make contact. I couldn't get it. Nothing was coming through. I was struggling. And I gave up. And I said, look, give me a sign if you're there. Just give me a sign. And I switched on the TV the next day randomly. And the very first thing that came on out of 120 channels was I Love Lucy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And these are the synchronicities that I'm talking about, that just the more I work with these beings, they just every day now, that stuff ramps up. And it is, there are days when I pinch myself and I just think, my God, I love my job. Do you get days like that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like with the quarks. So I channel the quark consciousness a couple times in these channeling courses, and I'm going, because I still do this, I still go, okay, I don't know if that's real, like, okay, Dan, like, but why would I ever choose the quarks if I'm going to delude myself? Because it's not something I'm not even a big quantum physics person now. Like it helped me to wake up, but I don't go down that rabbit hole very much. But then a client shows up and says that she's a healer. And in this session that we're having, she says, she asked, like, how can I go deeper with these healings I'm doing on people? And what she heard was start working with the quarks. And I got this within days of my second channeling of the quark consciousness. And I got full body goosebumps in that moment. Like, okay, I get it. It's real.
I seriously get that, and something I want to, without giving away all of your secrets and your techniques and things, just on a basic level.
I'll give all of them away. I don't care.
How if you could please give us tell everyone your national insurance number, date of birth, bank details, I'd appreciate it. No, I'm joking. But just on a basic level, because you teach light language, but you also teach channeling. I teach people how to channel, but what I want to know, what I'm fascinated about, is how do you breach teaching channeling just on a basic level? How do you how do you ease people into it through your way?
I think it's important to start by talking to them about it and setting them at ease, like, hey, this is what channeling is, this is what it isn't, this is why you don't have to be afraid, this is how you can make it easier on yourself for it to actually happen, answer whatever questions they have about it from me, and talk about the different aspects of it, the fact that it's a translation of energy, that they're not giving you words or giving you energy, like all the sort of nuts and boltsy type stuff I talk to them about in my courses and in my classes for the first hour. The second hour is I take them into two processes where each process led by me takes about 10 minutes for them to get completely into, and then I mute myself and I just let them do their thing for, if it's a group class, for about 10 minutes of that too, to give it a chance, because in my experience, you can be connected and have energy, but not be able to make any sense of it or give it any expression and it may take a while for that to happen. So I give them ample time to not only get there, but also to speak for it. And then I come back and we talk about it. What happened? A lot of people lately are saying, I'm getting faces, I'm getting colors, I'm getting geometrical shapes, like all sorts of things that people are seeing in their mind's eye while they're doing it. It's coming up a lot lately, the clairvoyant stuff. But then we'll talk about it, and then we'll go into the second one and do the same thing, and then that will fill up the second hour of the class.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating. I when I'm teaching it myself, usually I try and do it over like a 4 hour period, and I'm telling you that 4 hours goes like zoom. It's so quick. It's so quick. Do you ever get clients who cry and go into tears?
Yeah,
I get a lot of that. I get a lot of people who, when they can feel that energy, a lot of tears come up. They start crying.
Yeah.
It's that feeling when you and the other thing I want to we could talk all night long, and obviously we're not gonna have time because we have lives and all the rest of it, but what I find is that when the ETs come in the early days, it's kind of like this gorgeous honeymoon period, and you get all the sensations and all the ecstasy and you all these all these dreams and everything, and it's just like, it's kind of like spiritual heroin, and you never want it to stop, and then it stops, and then it's like, okay, we showed ourselves to you, we showed like what it's like and all the rest of it. Now it's over to you.
Yeah.
And that's what it was like for me, and that I had to work back up to it, and it was upsetting. I felt abandoned almost. Did you ever go through that?
Well, when I had my experience in March of 2010 with the downloads, that was the heroin. That was it, like the middle of the night ecstasy energy coming in through the crown. That was a heroin I've never been able to get back to, that moment. As many and I've gotten to the point where I'm able to give myself full body goosebumps on command anytime if I focus. Music sometimes will help me get there too, like Coldplay's Fix You. I've listened to that song thousands of times, and at the point where it becomes like completely instrumental, I'll usually, if I'm sitting down, I'll stand up and I'll start breathing and I'll start going like this, and the energy feels like it's coming in through the back kind of and moving forward. So I can do that, but I've never gotten back, like you're saying, I've never gotten back to that place where it was like the first time. And so I don't feel abandoned by it. I understand why it has to be that way, why we have to live in this world and not just be constantly like seeking out the next great, spiritually transformative experience, but instead be dealing with the stuff of this realm and looking to bring as much of that forward into it as we can, instead of, we have to have a balance of giving and receiving.
Mm. It's amazing that you say that it comes in from the back, because that's how
Yeah.
it comes in for me. When
Yeah.
it's building, when it's starting, they come in, or my guy comes in from the back. And I want to ask you something really, really interesting here, because I've been watching you for a long time. And then so I'm going to do an impersonation of you, okay? Are you ready? Okay. Okay. Hi guys, I'm Daniel Scranton, and now I'm going to bring in the Arcturians. Here we go. And then your hand goes up, yeah? And he's going like that. And it's like computer codes are like coming in and stuff, right?
Yeah.
For me, when it's happening, yeah, and I'm going to ask you in a minute. So I'm fascinated by the build up, right? Not when it's happening, but the build up. For me, the build up is there is this connection, and once it's made, it's always there. So what I do is I close my eyes. My Arcturian always comes in on the right hand side for some reason. Always on the right hand side.
Yeah, me too.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why my head's turned this way, because it's coming from here. When I channel, my head turns this way because it's definitely coming from my right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my
I
God.
feel the Palladians are coming from the left when I channel them.
Wow. This is why I just love talking to brothers, who are doing this, because it's like, oh my God, they come from the right, same. Like it comes from behind, like same. Like it's just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. So they come in on the right. I'm telepathically saying, come in, on my, just in my thoughts. I see it's one being that comes in. And then what I do is it's like like a radiator.
Uh-huh.
Imagine a radiator, yeah, a warm this is a radiator, yeah. This is a journal, but imagine a radiator, yeah. And this is how it happens for me. It's like a warmth. I can feel this sort of warmth. It's like a presence. And then what happens is the presence then comes behind me, and then it gets very cool. It gets very cool, like air conditioning. It goes from warm to cool. And then this thing comes in behind me and it's very cool. And I feel it come in, and it's like, and I know this is going to sound corny and weird, but it's almost like slipping on a silk shirt. It's like a very smooth feeling. And then it's almost like you sort of know that you're in. And then you take a couple of deep breaths, and then it just flows. That's like, what's it like for you?
Well, it's funny the arm goes up because it's almost like the arm's the antenna. And the, like I was saying before, the brain's a receiver, and the energy's kind of coming in. But then my fingers are flapping too, and they're doing this and they're touching as they pass each other. The middle and forefinger, they touch, and that creates a little friction. But I feel like that's energy leaving. Energy's coming in, energy's leaving, and then energy's moving in a circular motion in the mudra that I make too, so that it's coming back and circling back in. So there's all that going on. The e is not a sound that I came up with. That was always their way. It's just their sound that comes through in that way, through me, and other people would make a different sound, I'm sure. But it just feels like I'm plugged in now. Like now the energy's present. Now it's going to move through me. It's going to move through me in sound first, tones first, and tune me and everybody else up for this transmission. And then it's the same intro every time. Greetings, we are the Arcturian Council. we are pleased to connect with all of you. And then there's 3 yeses, and then they speak, and they usually just speak with like we. The first word is always we, and then the transmission starts coming through, and I have no idea what it's going to be until I start to formulate the words, and then I kind of get a general idea of what it's going to be. But then oftentimes in it, there's a twist, like, oh, the first paragraph is like a setup, and the setup is just to establish something, and then they're going to go. So sometimes I think I know where it's going, but I don't really.
I know that feeling.
I think that the difference in our experiences could also be that you said yours is physical being, a singular physical male, right? Whereas I'm channeling a non-physical collective of Arcturian consciousness. So it's a different experience when you're channeling physical and non-physical beings.
Yeah, it is so fascinating. Lovely, Daniel. You're a lot of fun, but it is such a joy to speak to you. We had a bit of fun talking prior to we had a bit of a pre-interview chat. You are such a lovely man. You really are. Is there anything that you'd like to conclude on, or a final message that you'd like to for anyone listening before we slowly and gently wrap this up?
Well, I would say, as much as, Alexander and I have both had our really cool experiences that sort of broke us into this realm that we're in now, as much as those are the cool experiences that everybody wants to have, it is the day-to-day, and it is like the facing of what we have to face in our lives. That is why we're here, and I think that anyone who takes an approach to their spirituality of not, I'm going to wait till my big ET encounter, but instead is like, I'm going to practice the spiritual practices that I like every single day. I'm going to sit to channel every single day. You will get so much out of that. And you don't have to just wait for the spaceships to land, and you don't just have to wait for the portal to open in your bedroom or whatever it is. That is the cool, mystical, magical experience that we all want to have. You don't have to wait for any of that to happen to start making these types of connections now and changing your life now, from each and every breath, each and every moment that you have to do so, because every moment's an opportunity, and we all have them all day. And it's just a matter of, a dedication to this life, to this more spiritually informed life that we do want to live as humans.
Good message. Strong. Daniel, you are a beautiful human being inside and out. You are very precious.
I've never received so many compliments in an interview. It's lovely.
And thank you for your time. But most importantly, thank you for being yourself.
Thank you, Alexander.
From us, and from my Arcturians, and from your Arcturians, and most important of all, that beautiful cat that is right there. Can we see her?
Alejandra, come on, smile for the camera.
Oh. From all 4 of us, we bid you good day and adieu, and goodbye for now.
Yes.